Senate Committee on State Affairs will come to order. Never mind. Will the clerk call the roll? Thanks.
Campbell, Hall,
Here.
Lucio, Nelson, Powell, here. Schwartner,
Present.
Zaffarini, Birdwell, Hughes.
Here. The quorum is present. Welcome, everyone. We have two bills set for today, and Senate Bill 83 and Senate Bill 90. We're going to lay both bills out and take testimony on them at the same time, and witnesses can tell us whether they're testifying on one or both. And okay. This time the chair lays out Senate Bill 83. Senate Bill 83 has to do with email service providers and the way that they handle emails based on their how the emails are discriminated against based on their viewpoint, based on their content. And so we're going to lay out that bill, and the chair also lays out Senate Bill 90. Senate Bill 90 deals with the email matter as well as the social media free speech questions, which this committee has considered before. And so Senate Bill 90 is very similar to Senate Bill 5 that we already passed, but it also includes this language about email. And so Senate Bill 83 and Senate Bill 90 are both before us. I'll speak briefly about the email matter because that's not been before this committee before. We have spent a lot of time on the social media censorship, free speech broadly. The email portion of Senate Bill 83 and 90 would prevent an email service provider from selectively limiting the user's receipt of certain emails based on the content of those emails. If the email, of course, contains offensive or dangerous content, such as a computer virus, or if the limitation or impediment is provided for under other law, the message can be limited by the service provider. For example, they're allowed to limit and impede messages when folks are intentionally sending obscene material or material depicting sexual conduct without proper warning, sending electronic messages that contain false, deceptive, or misleading information in the subject line, using another person's internet domain name without permission, or selling a person's email address without consent. Those are state law provisions. Federal law has similar restrictions, such as prohibiting the sending of unsolicited commercial electronic messages that contain pornography, obscenity, perpetuate fraud schemes, or introduce viruses. SB83 and its relevant portions in Senate Bill 90 also provide that an injured person can recover damages when they're already provided for under Section 321.105 of the Business and Commerce Code. And so, again, we understand limitations on email. We want to be protected from obscene and lewd, and the law provides for that. But beyond that, if emails are being discriminated against based on their viewpoint, based on politics or religion, that would be a problem. And so this provision about email in Senate Bill 83 and in Senate Bill 90 are consistent with the spirit of free speech and protection of a robust debate that we've been talking about before. So that's what the bills do. And again, both bills are before us, and so I'll yield for questions. Senator Zaffarini.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How would an email provider know the content of a user's email?
Well, Senator, so it has to do with what's in the subject line, for example, and studies have been done and tests have been done where even when, let's say, let me use you for an example. Let's say that you are communicating with subscribers, folks who have asked to be on your email list, and you can send out an email, identical body of the email, but if your subject line has certain words, and we're not talking about obscenity, we're talking about political terms, certain words will trigger these filters, and so even though I've subscribed to your email, that email goes to spam or gets blocked because of certain words you used in the subject line. You can send out the exact same email in the body to the exact same people with different words, and it goes through. So that's the idea. It's to make sure that as an email recipient, you're not having content blocked based on an arbitrary basis.
Is the provider expected to be surveying or monitoring our emails?
Well, they do already for spam, for obscenity, for things like that, because some of your emails go to your spam folder, some go to your junk folder, depending on who your provider is. So the email providers already do that, again, looking for spam, obscenity, things like that. So they're already looking at it. And of course, again, this is your provider that you have a contract with, whoever your provider is. And I mean as a recipient now when I talk about that.
So if they're already doing that, then what problem is this legislation trying to cure?
Well, it's one thing for them to ban obscenity, sexual content. Another thing for them to block political messages just based on their political viewpoint.
And do we have evidence that has happened?
Yes, ma'am. There have been reports that it's happening. That's what this is about.
Are we going to hear about that?
We may.
Good. I'd like to know about that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions. Senator Birdwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Based upon the answer to Senator Zaffarini, is it simply the subject line that is being used, or is the formulaic filtering or algorithms both the subject line and the content of the email?
Right. So the great question. We know that the subject line is one place, but of course the content of the email is also all available to your service provider. So we mentioned the subject line because tests have been done where the identical body of the email is sent with different subject lines. One gets through, one doesn't. So the subject line is one way we know it's happening, but it's not the only way. So it goes to everything in the email.
So it's not stopping. The email is not arriving to your account. It's that the email service provider is deciding what goes in your inbox and what goes in spam. It's not a matter of not being delivered.
Yeah.
It's a matter of which box you have to check to go find it.
We've had reports that sometimes it's also not being delivered, but we know that it's at least getting put in spam or in junk. And we're talking about even email lists that you have subscribed to, that you've said, I want to receive emails from Senator Zaffarini. And, of course, she sends out very nice emails. I'm using her as an example, of course. But I hope they wouldn't do that. No, of course not. Of course not.
Well, I could say something funny here, but I won't. But I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other questions about these two bills? Senator Powell, please.
Mr. Chairman, how significant is that problem? When you say we have heard of instances, how many? I mean, how large is that problem?
We don't really know. This came up during the regular session, and we've heard more reports of it since that time. And so we don't know how pervasive it is. We really don't know. And pardon me. So to the extent it's happening, it shouldn't be happening. And if it's not a problem, then if there's an email service provider who is not discriminating on this basis, they won't be affected by this bill. So that's the good news. But I'm not able to quantify it. I wish I could. I don't know the answer to your question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Which one? If I never said that. It's probably obvious many times when I try to answer, but I should probably say that more. And we'll open up public testimony, and Chair calls Servando Esparza. Mr. Esparza, welcome back. Come on down. You know the routine. Welcome. Get comfortable there. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you represent. And we have you here against both bills. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Go ahead. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for the record, my name is Servando Esparza. I'm Executive Director for TechNet in the Southeast region. I'm testifying in opposition to both SB83 and SB90. TechNet is a national bipartisan network of tech companies that promote the growth of the innovation economy. Since it's on the two bills, I'm going to roughly, since you guys have heard the social media platform 4 times, I'm going to focus on the email. It is roughly estimated that 316 billion emails are sent each day in 2021. Roughly 45% of that email traffic is spam, With increasing threats by spammers and cyber criminals, email service providers take steps to protect email users from those threats. Emails are the most common vector of cybersecurity attacks, which means email filtering is a vital layer of cybersecurity. As currently written, the filed version of Senate Bill 83 will make it difficult for email service providers to block spam and other malicious links, as the exceptions included in the bill as filed do not cover all forms of cyber threats. Senate Bill 83 does begin to take into account that some emails are flagged due to suspicious behavior, and I'll focus on that. A lot of the reasons why emails get blocked is because they're either sent from a suspicious IP address, the history of the user has violated several rules, they're sending emails to people that are not ever subscribed to their email list. That kind of behavior will lead to the likelihood of some of their emails being flagged as spam, and as well as when users receive emails and then flag to an email service provider, this is spam. With the high level of users flagging that, it essentially reflects back on the original sender, which will lead to potentially being added to a sort of a list that says, hey, this type of user from this IP address tends to send spam. You okay? With roughly
Finish that thought. Go ahead, next.
What's that?
Go ahead, finish that thought. Thanks.
Yeah, with roughly 142 billion spam emails sent a day, it's important that that email service providers have the ability to block some of these emails. Otherwise, the result could be an influx of spam in Texans' inboxes.
And thank you for your testimony. And let me ask you, I know that the originally filed version of the bill over in the House, there was a lot of concerns about that, and we got some language from some folks in the tech community that I think made it a little better. Help me walk us through that, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So a couple of the recommendations I sent it to offices is one is clarifying that the email service provider may block an email that contains a computer virus, has obscene or illegal content. That's already in the bill, but the scanning has to occur, right? And we want to make sure that during the scanning portion of it, when the email is not being transferred, that's not considered a impeding. That what it is we have to do it as per the bill. That once it's fully transmitted, that clarification doesn't fall under this.
Okay.
What-
So the process whereby you analyze the emails to determine what to do with them, that wouldn't be considered impeding. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Okay, go ahead.
The second part is clarifying that users can use blocking and filtering tools. I think we sort of read it as it should, and nothing on here sort of talks about the user part, but we want to make sure that that's clarified, because if the user says, I want you to block any email that is sent from
bet.
so-and-so, the email service provider does so, that they're not a violation of the bill because of that. There's a federal law called the Can Spam Act, which requires email service providers to do certain things. That's kind of the example that the chairman used about scanning the header or the subject line. That is part of Can Spam, to say certain something that includes sexual-oriented, sort of content has to have a specific initial on it, or for someone sending an unsolicited an email message has to follow certain rules, has to be clear that the subject line matches what the content of the bill says, right? Like if you get a coupon from a store, it has to say coupon from HEB, whatever, and then the body of it has to match. Otherwise, it sort of can violate the Can Spam Act. That said, we would want to make sure that under the exceptions that we include something that says, and applicable state and federal laws, so that the Can Spam Act is clearly a part of the exceptions there. One of the bigger concerns is there's a definition of computer virus already included in there. I think the statute has been updated in several sessions.
Right.
And so we want to make sure, this is the sort of biggest worry. We worked with the House author to try to refine this. My concern is it's not going to cover every single threat, and we try to be as broad as possible in the recommended language. However, if something else new comes up that's not defined under statute, then the legislature would have to come back and clarify that email service providers would have to ban this in order for its email service provider to block it. Otherwise, they're in violation of this. causing some cybersecurity concerns there.
Okay.
So trying to refine that. And then my last point is the penalties included in the bill are pretty severe. It's $10 per each impeded message or $25,000 for each day the unlawful message is impeded. We worked with the author in the House to include some language that says good faith, reasonable effort, that you blocked it because of the exceptions there. However, we want to make sure that there's we sent some language that would sort of give some flexibility, provide an avenue if there's a coding or some kind of error, that the blocking of it was sort of as part of an error and not something that the email service provider, in the instance that Senator Hughes is talking about, that purposefully looked for an email to block, that it's an error. We just think it's something that we want to make sure that the penalties are too severe, could penalize a lot of email service providers.
Thank you. Let me follow up on a couple of those things now.
Yeah.
Of course, we're here on Senate Bill 83 and Senate Bill 90, but I'm going to ask you about the House bill. You mentioned the matters that you told us about. Did they get that language in the House bill as far as you know? I know we're not here on that, but just
Maybe
help us.
75% of it in there, but not all of it.
Okay, good. Thank you. And other questions, members? I don't want to hog all the time. Did I cover your question, Senator Safran? I feel better. Well, thank you. All right. Very good. Thanks for your testimony. The chair now calls James Hines. There's Mr. Hines back there. Mr. Esparza and Mr. Hines are the only witnesses who've signed up to testify. So while we're preparing to hear from Mr. Hines, I'll ask if anyone else wishes to testify on, for, or against. If you do, go to the kiosk outside and let us know. Mr. Hines, welcome. Welcome back. You've been here before. Tell us, we got you on both bills, or against both bills. And it's really, it's red. It's got this thumbs down. It's really kind of a harsh symbol here, but it's not your fault. We know you're against the bill. So introduce yourself. Give us your testimony.
Yes, James Hines, Southern Region Director for the Internet Association, and I'm here today in opposition to SB83 and SB90. SB90, our opposition has been, I think, well articulated and is well known to the committee. So again, like my predecessor, I will just focus with a few comments on SB83. First, definitely want to echo every comment by Mr. Esparza of TechNet. So I will not try to repeat what he has said. With respect to email, as he mentioned, there are over 300 billion emails that are sent a day. I would like to point out for the committee that the moderation that takes place is not the same moderation that takes place with respect to social media platforms. It's more of a sorting function as far as emails going to junk, or if you have Gmail, it goes to promotions, advertisements, and so they have categories that the emails are sent to, and this is on the basis of algorithms. So there are algorithms that are involved, but you don't have the robust AI moderation. You don't have tens of thousands of human content moderators reviewing email messages, looking for religious messages or political messages or messages looking for vaccine information. That is not happening. And there's not that type of moderation that is taking place.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay. So I just kind of wanted to point out that it is more of a sorting feature, and there are certain triggers as to why an email is going to be sent to a junk file or to a spam file. A lot of that, much of the time, has to do with the sender's behavior as to why that is taking place. So I just want to point out those differences. And we shared a concern about the penalties, that we think that the penalties in the bill are pretty severe and doesn't take into account certain coding or execution errors that could occur with the filtering that an email service provider may have. And with that, I conclude my testimony.
Man, you must have, that was perfect timing. Senator Safran, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you know of any problem that this legislation is trying to cure, a serious problem?
I think that there are some anecdotes that I'm generally aware when I was doing my background research on this bill, where a particular sender was not able to get an email out. But again, there are lots of reasons why an email may be flagged or why something didn't go out. Each email service provider has their terms and conditions, and if they find that a sender is not complying with them, then they may flag an email, or an email may not go out. And so it's kind of hard to state generally that this is something that is systematic or is happening across the country.
If this bill were to pass, what would be its consequences, whether intended or unintended?
I think it would impede email service providers as far as their ability to, with their filters and their filtering technologies, they would have to take this into account along with the CAN-SPAM Act, which is the federal act that was referenced earlier, which is the law that everyone abides. This adds another regulatory layer that they would have to be concerned about to make sure that they are not violating the specific laws that have been written here.
Thank you. You said the penalties were too high. What would you suggest?
I don't know that we have a suggestion for the committee today, but at $10, a message up to $25,000 seems excessive, particularly when a lot of it is automatic with respect to filtering technologies that may block an email or may send an email to spam. That's something that, again, humans are not involved with that. So you really run up a tab with this.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Members, any other questions for Mr. Hines? Oh, Senator Powell, go ahead.
I'm just going to ask a really specific question. Would you suppose that legislation like this is really getting at a political purpose? That we want to open the door for mass political emails soliciting dollars, or make sure that we set the stage for that to occur?
I don't know if I can say specifically it's political. I think it does, prompt an ESP to allow lots of emails and lots of categories to go through that, they may filter for whatever reason. So
currently in your processes, do you filter out emails that are solicitous in a fraudulent way?
I think, there is algorithms based on fraud solicitation. So, yes, I think the fraud emails are flagged.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Senator. Members, any other questions for Mr. Hines? Thanks for your testimony. Senators, we also have, as a resource, a witness here from the Office of the Attorney General. I don't have any questions for the resource witness. Do anybody? Thanks for being here. Thank you both, gentlemen, for being here. Anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 83, or let's say 83. Anyone else on, for, or against? We'll close public testimony on Senate Bill 83. Anyone else here wishing to testify on, for, or against Senate Bill 90? We'll close public testimony on Senate Bill 90. And it's the chair's intent to leave both those bills pending at this time. And members, anything else to bring before the committee at this time? Very good. As we work with our friends over in the House and coordinate schedules, we're trying to be flexible, and so it is our intent to return to this room at 4:30 this afternoon. So State Affairs will be back here at 4:30 to consider pending business. So if there's nothing else, the committee stands in recess until 4:30 p.m. today, when we'll come back to this room. And that's nothing else. I'll say good morning. I'll see you this afternoon.